Welcome to Daily Premier League Transfer News. I'm recording this at 9:30 a.m. on Friday morning. And to be honest, I'm surprised that we haven't heard overnight whether Mathys Tel's decided or not whether to accept Tottenham's offer. I'm aware this video could be redundant by the time you even come to watch it. But yesterday's news of Spurs having a 60 million bid accepted by Bayern allowed even I, the cynical doubter of whether Daniel Levy would be able to get a player of that stature to the club, to start to believe that it could actually happen. But with each passing minute of Tel seemingly stalling and seeing which other clubs are going to come in, I do wonder how long it will be before Tottenham leak that they're moving on to other targets. And if that happens, let's face it, it'll be because Tel feels he can do better. I again hope to be proven wrong. It would be such an exciting signing. As well as all the reports on that, I'll also be discussing an in-depth report that came out yesterday into the huge scale of spending that Tottenham could do under profit and sustainability rules, as well as all of the other daily Premier League transfer news as the end of the window creeps ever closer. Guys, thank you so much for watching and for listening. If you're on YouTube, please do give this video a like, and also if you don't subscribe to the channel and you like daily transfer news, always starting of course with my team Tottenham Hotspur, please do press that subscribe button. Getting closer to 15,000 subscribers now. Okay, so here are all the reports from yesterday on the Mathys Tel deal. The Bayern Munich forward, who Tottenham have had a bid of 60 million euros accepted for by Bayern Munich, and a lot of that I think is down to the fact that Bayern Munich still owe us money for Harry Kane. So I do think that Munich are going to be pushing for Tel to join Spurs on a permanent deal. So yesterday they presented, last night apparently, their project to Mathys Tel and his agent with game time as the key factor. Spurs had a direct meeting with Bayern to guarantee the 60 million euro fee if Tel agrees to come. He apparently needs some time to decide, with several clubs keen and in talks. Fabrizio Romano said Tottenham are prepared to invest in Mathys Tel on a permanent transfer. They informed Bayern they'd be ready to pay the 60 million euro fee. Tel and his agent are taking their time to make a decision. Well, I don't think Tottenham have time. It's Friday, the window shuts on Monday. They will have to move on to other targets quickly, and I don't think they can afford to wait all weekend for a decision. And I think the pressure will be on Tel this morning. And that's why I think, that's why I said in the opening, I'm surprised it hasn't already happened. But I think it will happen very soon. According to Romano as well, he said that Levy is helping to work himself on the Tel deal. He's asked for a few more hours to make a decision on his next move. That was late last night. Other reports saying that anything is possible, a loan or a permanent deal. Talks also ongoing with the clubs such as Chelsea and Aston Villa. Aston Villa, of course, now cash rich because of the money they got in for John Duran. Tottenham currently in very intensive talks with Bayern. That's according to Plettigol. Apparently, according to Sammy Mockbell, Tel is waiting to see if Manchester United or Arsenal formalise their interest in his services before making a final decision. Apparently, according to Miguel Delaney, United aiming to sell Garnacho and bring in Tel on loan if they can get Garnacho out the door. So I think a lot of this is kind of brinksmanship, isn't it? Who's gonna bite first? Who's going to jump first? John Cross in the Mirror, who reports on Arsenal, says that Arsenal are pulling out all the stops to make a deal for Mathys Tel happen. So listen. And also this morning, according to Plettigol, Al Ali in Saudi Arabia have also made contact regarding Mathys Tel. However, due to foreign player regulations, the deal would be complicated. Most likely scenario at the moment is a move to the Premier League. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Like I said, it's 9:30 here now as I record it. Last night I started allowing myself to think it could happen. The thing that makes me most positive that it could happen is the Harry Kane money element and how hard Bayern might push him to go on a permanent deal, whereas I feel like most of the other clubs, maybe except for Villa, would want him on a loan at first for sure. And maybe that puts Tottenham in some credit. Also, the fact that Spurs were interested in when the Harry Kane deal was being done. So that might have some kind of sway over him to think, oh, this is a club who've really been after me. But of course, we're down in 15th place. There's very little hope of Champions League football next season unless we win the Europa League. But as I said in yesterday's video, of course, he will be a starter at Spurs. I think he would get to start and he would be starting all the time, whereas those other clubs, maybe except for Villa, although Villa have a lot of strong forward options as well. Maybe we're the only club who can probably offer him regular first-team football starting right from the beginning. And if he's leaving Bayern Munich because he doesn't feel he's playing enough games, maybe that could be a sway again. But as I said, my feeling now at 9:30, as we wait to hear any news today about it, other than that Saudi Arabian link, is that it will be another one like Luis Diaz, like Dybala, like Bastoni, where we get our hopes up and then we are let down. How do you feel about it if that is the case? Daniel Levy, I think, clearly has pushed the boat out here. All the reputable journalists saying the 60 million has been accepted, so I'm not sure you could blame him for not looking to spend that money, but I dare say if it doesn't get through, then it will be somehow blamed on him. Some more Tottenham transfer rumours coming out yesterday. According to Plettigol, Spurs in the race for Nuremberg starlet Stefanas Simas. They're engaged in concrete talks and negotiations apparently, although Brighton are currently in pole position. So that is one that might come forward, I guess, if the Tel deal doesn't happen. Also, some reports that Spurs have been talking about bringing in Fikayo Tomori through intermediaries from AC Milan. That's one to keep an eye on. Spurs did complete a deal for their academy yesterday, and what a day for the academy it was, with 3 academy graduates scoring in that important 3-0 win against Elfsborg. They have bought Daniel Batty from Manchester City, an 18-year-old attacking midfield talent. £500,000 transfer fee up front with future add-ons and a sell-on percentage. A medical is happening at the moment. Paul O'Keefe has said that Sergio Reguilon has interest from 2 clubs in Spain, as well as AEK Athens in Greece. Apparently Reguilon not in any rush to make a decision and could well finish his contract and go on a free in the summer. And let's face it, he's probably going to get some more game time in the coming week, so that kind of makes sense. I mentioned in their opening, I read this amazing piece with Stefan Borson, who, if you don't know him, he's a financial football expert. And he went on TalkSport yesterday and discussed in full how Tottenham have such a huge capacity to spend money when it comes to the profit and sustainability rules. Not a lot of clubs do. And of course, this is something that massively frustrates the Tottenham fan base, because if we can spend that money, why are we not? And the answer to that is, of course, that ENIC have never ever said and have never ever spent their own money on the club. They look to run it sustainably. So any money that comes in, they will spend on the team and the club. And of course on Daniel Levy's wages. But they're not like the Glazers in that they siphon money off for themselves. That is a myth. That is not something that happens. But they do not spend their own money. Whereas if we did have an owner who had kind of a bottomless cash reserve, for instance, Saudi Arabia, or an oligarch like Roman Abramovich, or Abu Dhabi in Manchester City's case, then in terms of the rules, we would be able to spend it. So this is how it works. I'm not a financial expert myself, so I'm just going to read it and give my thoughts on it, rather than give you any kind of full detail, because I'm not an expert, like I said. But the estimated loss, Tottenham's reported operating loss over the 3-year profit and sustainability rules monitoring period is around £195 million. However, Spurs have very high allowable deductions of around £280 million, largely due to depreciation related to their stadium. These deductions significantly reduce their adjusted profit and sustainability rules loss and create an adjusted profit. Thanks to these deductions, Spurs actually end up with a near £60 million profit for the 23-24 season and a 3-year around £85 million adjusted profit and sustainability rules profit. So that's not a profit in terms of money they actually have in the club. That is in terms of, you're allowed to lose £105 million under the PSR cycle over 3 years. But Tottenham haven't lost anything. They've in fact got an £85 million profit. So that means they have significant £190 million-ish headroom against the maximum allowed loss. But apparently, according to Stefan Borson, there's more than that, as approximately a £60 million loss from 21-22 drops off in the 24-25 monitoring period. So Spurs have even more financial flexibility this season as a result. And then Borson goes on to say, but there's more. Conservatively, Spurs are heading for revenue of £580 million plus for this season and financial year, whereas last season was £530 million. So that's £50 million more than last season. Even if the wages remain at 43% of revenue, this would move them up to £250 million for the season. Add in, he says, say a £20 million player trading profit, and that gives another year of profit and sustainability rules losses within the £35 million limit and a forecast headroom of £140 million for 24-25. So these are huge numbers that Spurs, if they had cash reserves, would be able to spend. He goes on, there's more. Huge spending would be required to come close to eroding a headroom of that size. Remember, the 2 key PSR rules when you spend are amortization, which is the fee including costs over 5 years, and the incremental wages. So even if Spurs spent £100 million on deadline day on a player, on about £10 million per annum wages, the 24-25 PSR cost would only be £100 million by 5, or plus £10 million in wages, i.e. £12.5 million. Not even 10% of the forecast for Spurs' 24-25 PSR headroom. So, in conclusion, Spurs have significant financial flexibility under PSR. There are other factors, cash and owner desire, of course, to take into account, but PSR capacity is not a hindrance. High allowable deductions, mostly from stadium depreciation, mean they're comfortably compliant even if they spend big on players. Spurs then can therefore spend hundreds of millions on signings and wages and still not risk a PSR breach anytime soon. So, that gives a little bit of colour on how good a financial position Spurs are. And you've got to give credit to Daniel Levy for getting us in that position. He has grown the club as a business incredibly. But now, of course, the fans are rightly saying, why can't we just spend that money on players then? We need help on the pitch. Can you do it? And yes, he had a £60 million bid, euro bid, accepted from Mathys Tel. So when the player is right, he's willing to spend. But the key point, and this is why Tottenham are looking for investment. They're looking for investment for around 25% of the club from someone who is willing to put cash in the bank that then they can spend on the pitch, is because ENIC are an investment fund. They're an investment company and they do not spend their own money on their investments. They just look to plump up their investments and then possibly move them on at some point. So that is where we are in terms of that kind of money. And I think one of the big problems Spurs have had over the last few years that has stopped them from spending a lot of money on players, or more money on players that we'd like them to spend, is we haven't sold well enough. Do you remember in those years back in the kind of early Poch years, and we'd have all those players coming up through the academy who then got loads of money in through the door, the likes of Jake Livermore as an example, as well as players we bought who then we sold on for really good money. For instance, Kevin Wimmer, I think we got 12 million from Stoke for when we'd only paid maybe 5 for him. But since the Pochettino era, we have not been able to sell players and get money back into the club. And therefore, there's just not a lot of money that is actually in the bank for Tottenham to spend. Okay, some other reports coming out yesterday, which is even though some Tottenham fans are keen to see Mauricio Pochettino come back to Spurs, he is fully committed to his role as America's head coach ahead of the World Cup next year and wants to fulfill his ambition of taking that nation into their home tournament. I don't know how you feel, let me know in the comments below, but I saw some element, I know Elfsborg were really poor last night, but I saw some semblance of Ange Postecoglou's ball coming back to play. We played pretty well. We were quite patient yesterday. I liked it. I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but Ian Wright was on their podcast with Gary Neville, wasn't he? And he talked about Daniel Levy, and he was pretty scathing on the overlap. He said, you look at Tottenham as a business, unbelievably run. If Levy had the same energy for trying to win something for Tottenham, they'd be winning something. He goes on to say this. Remember, they've had arguably one of the best goal scorers in English history in respect of he came through the academy and they didn't build anything around that. How many golden boots did Harry Kane get in the end? Was it 3 or 4? You've got somebody who's capable of doing that and you don't build a team around him. They should have been winning things. They haven't won anything, have they, with Levy at the helm? Tottenham used to win trophies. They used to win FA Cups and they used to win stuff. It's Levy. He's the one. They've got to get Levy out and get an owner in who wants to win something. Well, I think a lot of the fan base are in agreement with Ian Wright. However, I do think it's important to remember a caveat when including all this, which is that the stadium build and the Northumberland development project that Levy started working on 20 years ago is still happening. We are still having to deal with the reckoning from the stadium build. And I'll say it again, it took Arsenal 7 years before they spent any money after the stadium build, and another 6 years after that before they spent big. So Spurs now, with coming into our 6th season in the stadium, are getting towards that period where they can really reap the rewards of the stadium build, but we have a lot more debt from that stadium build than even Arsenal did. So it's going to take time, and we do have to be patient. But as those financial PSR reports showed, Tottenham do have a lot of wiggle room in terms of the rules, but they just don't have a lot of cash in the bank. was very impressed yesterday with Mickey van de Ven's 45 minutes. What a player he is. And said this about him before the game. He said, I'm not worried about playing him. He's got to come back at some stage. We can keep him training forever and never play, and then he'll never get injured. That's not how it works. We've done everything in our power. We did last time too. Last time he probably played more than he should have in the first game, but again, in hindsight, the circumstances around that game, without rewriting history, were pretty challenging anyway. Basically waxing lyrical about Mickey van de Ven. I think it was huge that he got 45 minutes in his legs. He just looked like a colossus. He didn't look to me like he wanted to sprint that much, and I'm glad about that. I don't think in a game like that he needed to, but the way he used his body to knock players off the ball and the way he read the game, fantastic. And obviously with Dragusin getting injured, we're going to need more of Mickey van de Ven. Ange was also asked how he has been dealing with the pressure. He says, it doesn't affect me. It never has. It never will. My view on my role has never been about self-preservation or security. It's about trying to achieve, and we're still in a position where we can do that. Well, now we're into the final, the last 16 of the Europa League. That does give us something to look forward to in March, when we should have more players back. We obviously have a huge week this week with the cup games. Even the league game, Brentford away, but then Liverpool in the second leg and Aston Villa. Can we imagine if we could just have a good week, an amazing week, and get through in those? It could make for a really exciting back end. Also, our captain, leader, legend. I know he's not actually our captain, Decky Kulusevski, but he's really starting to act it. And he set up that first goal for Dane Scarlett with a beautiful cross yesterday, didn't he? He was really giving some support to Ange Postecoglou. He said this: we had games when we showed perfect football that not many teams can play in the world. We played beautiful games against United, against City away 4-0. So I think he is the right man. We play for him. We want to win for him. And to be honest, we have similar ideas, because I'm very positive as a guy, and I always want to play that football that he wants. He likes to stay positive. Kulusevski said this: you tried to keep it up, the positivity in the change room, to lead by example. And when things are going bad, you tried to lead by example and go to the gym a bit earlier. Try to show other people that you're doing it. They see it and they go, okay, we'll do that too. So be a good example, stay positive and lead, and stay away from anything negative. Listen, Decky got about 45-50 minutes break yesterday, and I'm really pleased that he got a little bit of a rest. But what a player we have, and we need to keep him fit. Okay, guys, before I get on to other Premier League transfer news, once again, please do give this video a like. And if you're not a subscriber to my channel, do give me a subscribe. Daily Premier League transfer news during the windows, always starting with my team, Tottenham Hotspur, and really close to 15,000 subscribers now, only about 1,000 away. So let's get me up to that 15,000 subscribers. Got really great engaged community, guys. So get in the chat and talk about all things Tottenham and all things transfers. Okay, starting at Aston Villa, they're plotting a move to sign Wolves star Mathys Cunha as they look to spend the money that they're getting in from Saudi Arabia for John Duran. They're also in talks with PSG for Marco Asensio. He's one of the main names on their list. And actually, Monchi, their sporting director, came out this morning and said, yes, they are in fact interested in Asensio. They've also made contact with Chelsea for João Felix, and he is one that they really want to get through the door. Monchi said this about João Felix: Unai Emery trusts his talent. We were close to getting a deal done last summer. These years, he's always been part of our desires. He's a big talent, but he needs the right environment. It's not an easy deal with Chelsea. Well, that will be because Chelsea will have him on an incredibly long contract on incredibly high wages. And Chelsea are desperately trying to get players out of their club during this month. And at the moment, they're struggling. And hopefully that's their chickens coming home to roost, with them just, I think, naively tying up players to really long contracts. And then, obviously, when it comes to wanting to get them out the door, like players who Villa are interested in, Disasi and Felix, Villa aren't going to pay the kind of wages that Chelsea are paying, even though they're in the Champions League. So, yeah, it's interesting to see what happens in the last few days. Villa also, apparently, Arsenal's opening offer for Ollie Watkins was closer to £45 million than the £60 million that was suggested. Arsenal apparently weighing up a second bid, but Villa adamant they don't want to sell him with John Duran heading to Saudi Arabia. And then an interesting one yesterday coming out of Brighton, where Al Nassr from Saudi approached Brighton with a formal bid to sign Karim Mitoma for €65 million. That was rejected by Brighton, but Al Nassr really want him, and apparently are willing to potentially move up to around 85 million euros to get Mitoma. The reason I find this interesting is because as a Spurs fan, I would be tempted to match any bid that comes in for Mitoma. The only reason I know they won't is because he's 27, and I don't think they'd be willing to spend that money on a player with only 3 years left until he's about 30. But I think Mitoma, injury permitting, is one of the great Premier League wide forwards, and I would love to see him at Tottenham Hotspur. My God, what a player he is. Okay, guys, once again, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please do press that like button. Please do press subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Let's get up to 15,000 subscribers. And it's now, nearly 10 o'clock on Friday. I'm really hoping that Tottenham get this Mathys Tel deal over the line, but I do fear that it won't happen and that he is stalling and that he will end up going to Aston Villa, Manchester United, Chelsea or Arsenal. And I have to say, it will be devastating and another moment that we've talked about for years to come with Spurs fans if we don't get this one over the line. But I do feel like the club are trying everything they can to make it happen. I won't be blaming the club if it doesn't happen. But I would love to see Mathys Tel come to Spurs with this young, hungry, exciting squad. As we saw last night, 3 academy graduates scoring the goals that took us through to the last 16 of the Europa League. And maybe he could be an absolute focal point of that team if indeed he is willing to come to Spurs. As I've said all week, Agent Harry Kane, get back in his ear. Tell him that it's the right move for him. Let's get Mathys Tel to Tottenham Hotspur. But I have to say, at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, I'm doubting whether it's going to happen. Okay, enjoy your Friday, everyone. Thanks for watching. Cheers.